Hello everyone, this is Mr. Vanderpool. So we're going to be moving on to our problems where we're going to be connecting an ADAS to a short-run Phillips curve, and then we're going to shift around aggregate demand and short-run aggregate supply on the ADAS, and then we're going to see what happens to inflation and unemployment on our Phillips curve, specifically our short-run Phillips curve. All right, so the first thing we're going to do is we're going to look at what happens on the short-run Phillips curve if you have an increase in aggregate demand. And ultimately, you're going to see it's going to create an up-left movement along the short-run Phillips curve. So we're going to have an ADAS graph right next to a short-run Phillips curve, and they're going to be connected. So let's go ahead and do that. So what we have here is we have an ADAS graph in a recessionary gap. So we're at price level P, output Y. We connect that over to the short-run Phillips curve. We are at an inflation rate level pi, and then an unemployment rate U. Because we are not at full employment at this point, our level of unemployment is going to just be U. If we are at full employment, we're actually going to be at the natural rate of unemployment, because when you're at full employment, that's associated with the natural rate of unemployment, or UN. So what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and increase aggregate demand back to full employment output on our ADAS. So we go ahead and shift that aggregate demand curve to the right from AD to AD1. You can see we now have a new equilibrium on our ADAS. We're at price level P1. We are at full employment output. Now, as we move that over to our short-run Phillips curve, you can see that we're at a new inflation rate, pi 1, and then we are at a lower unemployment rate, and that is UN, and that which is the natural rate of unemployment. And the reason we're going ahead and labeling this unemployment UN, or the natural rate of unemployment, is because we are at full employment output. So on our ADAS, be sure when you're at full employment output there and you're connecting that over to the short-run Phillips curve, that level of unemployment is called UN. It's the natural rate of unemployment when you're at full employment output. So you can see there that after that aggregate demand shift on the ADAS, on the short-run Phillips curve, you can see that inflation went up and unemployment went down. So if you have an increase in consumption, gross private investment, government spending, that exports, that's going to imply that aggregate demand is going to shift to the right, which is going to push up GDPR and the price level, which implies that the unemployment rate is going to fall and the inflation rate is going to go up. And you can see that along your short-run Phillips curve. And ultimately what happened is you had an up-left movement along that short-run Phillips curve. Also be aware, if I was to ask you where the long-run Phillips curve is going to be, it would be right above UN, right above that natural rate of unemployment. All right, let's look at our next scenario here. We're going to have a decrease in aggregate demand, which we're going to see is going to cause a down right movement along that short-run Phillips curve. Okay, so when you're increasing and decreasing aggregate demand, you're basically moving along that short-run Phillips curve. So in this situation, we have on the left, we have our ADAS in an inflationary gap. We're at price level P, output Y. To the right, we have a short-run Phillips curve. And as you can see there, we're at inflation rate pi and unemployment rate U. It's just a normal unemployment because we're not at full employment output here. So we're going to go ahead, and thus we're not at the natural rate of unemployment. So what we're going to go ahead and do here is we're going to shift aggregate demand to the left. We're going to have a decrease in aggregate demand back to full employment output. So we shift it to the left there from AD to AD1. We have a new output on our ADAS. We're at price level P1, and we can see we're at full employment. Now we move that over to our short run Phillips curve, connect it over. You can see that inflation fell there from pi to pi 1. And then as we go down, you can see we're at a higher level of unemployment. And because we're at full employment on our ADAS here, we're going to be at the natural rate of unemployment there, or UN. So once again, when we increase, decrease aggregate demand, we're just moving along that short run Phillips curve. So if you have a drop in consumption, gross private investment, government spending, net exports, that implies that aggregate demand is going to shift to the left, which implies that real GDP is going to fall and the price level is going to fall, which implies that the unemployment rate is going to go up and the inflation rate is going to go down, as you can see on your movement along the short-run Phillips curve. And this, of course, is a down-right movement along the short-run Phillips curve. So once again, if I was to ask you where the long-run Phillips curve would be, you would just go ahead and just say, you would graph it right above that natural rate of unemployment, UN. All right, so now we're going to go ahead and shift around short-run aggregate supply here in these scenarios. The difficult thing with this is when you start shifting around short-run aggregate supply, remember you got to shift around the short-run Phillips curve the opposite way of short-run aggregate supply. Remember, if the short-run aggregate supply moves one way, the short-run Phillips curve moves the other way. So we're going to go ahead and start off here with an ADAS connected with the short-run Phillips curve. And on our ADAS, you can see we're at price level P, we're at output Y, we're at a recessionary gap. As we connect that over, we are at inflation rate pi, and then we are at the unemployment rate U. Okay, and once again, this is just a normal unemployment rate. We're not at full employment at this point. So now we're going to go ahead and shift the short-run aggregate supply to the right, which, be aware, is going to shift the short-run Phillips curve to the left. So let's go ahead and do that. So we shift short-run aggregate supply to the right, to SRAS1. The short-run Phillips curve, as you can see, is going to shift to the left to SRPC1. Now, on our ADAS, we're going to take a look at where SRAS1 intersects aggregate demand. You can see we have a new lower price level, and we're back at full employment output. Now, what we're going to go ahead and do is we're going to go ahead and connect that price level over. Okay, as you can see, inflation went down there from pi to pi 1. We connected over to the new Phillips curve, SRPC1, and we go down, and as you can see, we're at a lower level of unemployment. In fact, here, because on our ADAS we're at full employment output, we are going to be at the natural rate of unemployment, or UN. And here I took the liberty of going ahead and putting the long-run Phillips curve, which would be above, always above, the natural rate of unemployment, or UN there. So if we have lower inflationary expectations, lower input prices, increase in productivity, lower business taxes, less regulation, that is going to imply that the short-run aggregate supply curve is going to shift to the right, which implies that the real GDP goes up and the price level goes down, which implies that unemployment goes down and inflation goes down. You can see that on your short-run Phillips curve after you shifted the short-run Phillips curve to the left from SRPC to SRPC1. And once again, the SRPC shifted to the left. Now, this created what's called disinflation, where you're seeing inflation going down a little bit. So once again, remember that when you're shifting around the short aggregate supply curve, you're going to have to go ahead and shift that short-run Phillips curve the opposite way, and then you go ahead and connect it over, and you can figure out what happens to inflation and unemployment. All right, one more scenario here, which is a decrease in short-run aggregate supply. So short run aggregate supply here is going to shift to the left, which remember, that's going to cause the short run Phillips curve to shift to the right. So once again, we have our ADAS connected to a short run Phillips curve here. Let's go ahead and look at the scenario. So now, in this case, we're actually, on our ADAS, we're actually at full employment output. We're at price level P, and we're at full employment output. As we connect that over to the short run Phillips curve, you can see we're at inflation rate pi, and then as we go down, we're at the natural rate of unemployment because we're at full employment output on our ADAS. So then we're going to be at full employment. We're going to be at the natural rate of unemployment, which is UN. And once again, I took the liberty of going ahead and graphing that long run Phillips curve, which is going to be above the natural rate of unemployment. So next, what we're going to do is shift the short run aggregate supply to the left, which, remember, is going to shift the short run Phillips curve the opposite way, which is to the right. So let's go ahead and do that. So the short run aggregate supply shifts to the left to SRAS1, and as you can see, our short run Phillips curve shifted to the right to SRPC1. Now, we're going to look at where SRAS1 hits aggregate demand. You can see we have a higher price level. We go ahead and connect that over to SRPC1. Okay, we're connecting it to the new short run Phillips curve, SRPC1. And as you can see, that creates a new inflation level, pi 1, and we go down. You can see we have an unemployment level here of U1, and this is not the natural rate of unemployment because we're not at full employment output on our ADAS when we have SRAS1 hitting aggregate demand. So, increase in inflationary expectations, increase in input prices, drop in productivity, business taxes up, increased regulation. This is going to imply that the short run aggregate supply curve is going to shift to the left, which implies that real GDP is going to fall and the price level is going to go up, which implies that the unemployment rate goes up and the inflation rate is also going to go up. You can see that on our short run Phillips curve there. And the short run Phillips curve, of course, shifted to the right. Now, this, of course, creates stagflation, which is when you see both the unemployment rate and the inflation rate going up. All right, let's take a look at a summary here. So there is a short-run trade-off between unemployment and inflation, and this is the short-run Phillips curve. Now, in the long run, there is not a trade-off between unemployment and inflation. This is the long-run Phillips curve. The long-run Phillips curve exists at the natural rate of unemployment. Remember that the natural rate of unemployment right above that is going to be that long-run Phillips curve. An increase in that natural rate is going to shift the long-run Phillips curve to the right. Decrease is going to shift it to the left. If we have changes in consumption, gross private investment, government spending, net exports, that changes aggregate demand, and you move along the short-run Phillips curve. If aggregate demand shifts to the right, that's going to imply that real GDP is going to go up, price level is going to go up, which implies that the unemployment rate goes down and the inflation rate goes up, and that is going to move you along the short-run Phillips curve up and to the left. And then if we have a drop in aggregate demand, that's going to imply that real GDP is going to fall, price level falls, which implies that the unemployment rate goes up and the inflation rate goes down. And that is going to imply a down right shift along the short run Phillips curve. Changes in inflationary expectations, input prices, productivity, taxes, regulation is going to change short run aggregate supply, which of course is going to change the short run Phillips curve. The short run Phillips curve is going to shift the opposite way of the short run aggregate supply. So short run aggregate supply shifts to the right. We have that implies real GDP goes up, price level down, which implies that unemployment rate falls and the inflation rate falls. And this is going to imply that short run Phillips curve is going to shift to the left, the opposite way of short run aggregate supply. If short run aggregate supply shifts to the left, that implies that real GDP falls, price level goes up, which implies that the unemployment rate goes up, inflation rate goes up, which implies the short run Phillips curve shifted to the right, the opposite way once again of short run aggregate supply. Okay, So now we're going to go ahead and do a couple of practice problems here with your Phillips curve. So we're going to start with number 1. It says graph verbally describe what would happen to the short-run Phillips curve if there was an increase in consumption in a society, and what would happen to the inflation and the unemployment rate. So here's what I would do here. I would go ahead and connect an ADAS to a short-run Phillips curve. They need to be right next to each other. So I would go ahead and start my ADAS at full employment output. That's probably the easiest thing to do. And as you connect that over, of course, you're going to have an inflation rate and you're going to have the natural rate of unemployment there because you're going to be at full employment output under ADAS. Then I would go ahead and shift either aggregate demand or short aggregate supply on the ADAS. Then go ahead and either move along the short-run Phillips curve or shift that short-run Phillips curve, and then connect over and figure out what happened to unemployment as well as inflation. And then for number 2, it's going to be very similar. We're going to graph verbally describe what would happen to the short-run Phillips curve if there was an increase in business taxes and what would happen to the inflation and unemployment rate. So once again, put an ADAS in full employment output, connect to a short-run Phillips curve, shift around short aggregate supply or aggregate demand, go ahead and connect it over. Remember that if you shift the short aggregate supply, you need to shift the short-run Phillips curve the opposite way, and then tell me what happened to inflation and unemployment. For both of these, you do not have to put the long-run Phillips curve. I have not asked you to plot the long-run Phillips curve, so you do not need to do so. All right, you'll probably have to pause here because these can take a little while, and then we will move on. And for the summary in a paragraph, describe what you learned today. All right, look forward to seeing you guys tomorrow. Have a great day. Bye-bye.